Hello, everybody. Grant Hunter here for another Product Growth Leaders topic of the week. You know, Steve, we've had a couple of engagements lately where we're working with companies that are like in that, I think gazelle is a term some people use. A gazelle is a company that double, right? Going through a rapid scaling area. And, some of them are companies that they've gone through it, and I don't know how they did because they weren't doing the right stuff with product management. Some of the companies are going through it and going, oh shoot, what do we do? I wrote that article on how product management is what connects strategy to execution, and that's incredibly important in that area. But I thought talking about product management and scaling companies would be good. What about you?
I agree. It's really quite fascinating to work with companies that are scaling because they're just so open to, oh, let's see if we can improve things, And a lot of times we get into cases where they're like, well, we'll maybe change something or maybe we won't. But the teams that we're working with are so enthusiastic, which I think is really exciting. But then maybe if you're looking at a trajectory that's up and to the right, you're like, hey, life is good.
Well, and that's with one of the people we're working with now. It's like, you guys are doing amazing. Yes. I mean, just to be where you are is incredible. But yes, you do need that product management muscle. And that was the term that one of them used that we sort of liked. You need to build that product management muscle and muscle memory to make sure you can keep doing it. And before we get in, and boy, Steve, this is our longest opening, I think, yet. But I was just talking to somebody this morning about the product who's interested in the Product Ops Alliance, and he said we're 100-some person company who's starting to scale faster, and they hired a product ops person to help lead that scale. I'm like, wow, that's like getting ahead of the curve. So he could not join the call, unfortunately, but I'll try to tell his story if it comes across. So we've got another great panel with us today. Paul Hurwitz, Calvin Marshall, May Wong, Jason Vincelette, Brian Weber, new to the call, Kelly Walton, and sitting in the Alice from Brady Bunch or Charles Nelson Riley is it Charles Nelson Riley?
Yep.
From Hollywood Squares. Seat for me, at least in my view today, is Joy McCaffrey. Joy, it's so good to have you back on the call.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
It's good to be back. Well, if you want to talk about good to be back, we put the question in the community on Monday. How does product management need to evolve or change as companies scale? And do you know who came back as the first answer?
Jason.
My boy, Jason. It's so nice. It's like synchrony in the world again, right? Jason answering first on a Monday. Jason, so good to have you back. You said as a company scales, prioritization will be even more important and visible. A product manager will have even more sources of input that they have to address. So managing this process becomes even more important. Talk to me about prioritization. You also went on to talk about the whole product changing and that type of stuff. I'd love to put it in your words, not mine, just reading what you wrote.
Yeah, you don't want to read what I wrote because I realized I had to take an English class after I wrote this, I think on Monday.
Oh, that's everything I write, Jason.
I know. I'm like, how many times am I going to say more and important in this?
Grammarly keeps coming in. Maybe use critical instead of.
Yeah, I know. So definitely going to hit the thesaurus next time and see if I could change that up a bit, or at least read it. So yeah, I think, I just had a call with a recruiter yesterday, which I love to talk to recruiters because I like to see where their mind is at as far as product managers. And I know we've spoken about this before. And, they a lot of times in startups, and when you're initial product manager, and I think May might have touched on this, they're looking for an inventor. They want a product manager who can create a solution based on their own knowledge and experience in that industry, in that solution. So redo what you did before, but do it for me. Whereas when you start scaling, they're all of a sudden they're like, we need somebody to manage all these processes and inputs so that everybody's going bananas. And so we can still make sure we're doing the right thing. When I told the recruiter, I'm like, those are two different product managers. And if a company is going to scale and they're looking at still somebody to invent, they're looking at different possibly opportunities. and different levels of importance. And so basically what I was just saying here, as a company wants to scale more, once you start getting customers, that's your burden, because now customers are starting to ask for things, whereas a startup, you might have one customer or just the CEO looking for things. And once the customers start asking for things, then the salespeople start asking for things, pre-sales. And if you don't have somebody who can establish a process to be able to digest all of that information, including analysts, relations, anything coming from marketing, those kind of things, then you're going to take that inventing product manager and really blow their mind. And so that is kind of what I talked about is how more sources of information and keeping that under control becomes more important.
The chaos of all the inputs.
Yes.
In Crossing the Chasm, Jeffrey Moore talks about how once you cross the chasm and hit is that the tornado that goes up from the chasm? All you should focus on is selling, because that's where scale happens. Steve, I was thinking about what we've talked about before in previous lives about how scale comes when you keep listening to the non-customers, the potential customers, not listen to our internal customers, our existing customers, right?
Right. I have nothing to add to that. But I was just...
I have nothing to add to that, but...
I don't think I've ever heard Steve say, I have nothing to add to that.
And maybe, I'll tell you what, I'll leave it at that. It'll be that special moment that will exist only in this session. Move on.
Move it on. We're going to move it on. Well, our new star pupil, May Wong, came in next and said, in a fictional company or startup, this is how I see it panning out. So we're now going into role play, I guess, or scenario planning is probably a better term for business audiences. PM1, founder does everything to start. PM1, do everything, including sales support, marketing, training. PM2, figure out how to divide the work. PM3, when does PM Dawn come? Oh, that's a way 80s, 90s music reference. Sorry. PM3 to 5, definitely a hierarchy is established. Talk to me about what you went through thinking this out, May.
So I remember talking to a group of people who just started their own companies, and they said, every time your company doubles, the entirety of your company changes, like the culture of your company, and also like everything about how you work and how you think about what you're doing changes drastically. And every time you add a PM, you also add a whole bunch of developers and maybe designer, and also maybe a couple more functions on top of that. So like if you take a look at the number of PMs, it actually oftentimes tell you about what the scale of the company is. So for a while, I was actually looking at maybe joining a startup, and then I realized that was probably not me, because I'm not really much of an inventor, as Jason calls it. I'm more of maybe more of a process inventor, but really more of that scale part, right? So as you introduce new functions, you have to think about how do these functions operate? Where do you draw the lines and the roles and responsibilities? And also, as those teams scale, how do you interact? So once you hit more than 5, it really just falls into overall company scaling, not just product scaling.
I agree. And I love the way you went through it with the scenario. I'll be honest with you, I'm almost adding, there's the inventor product manager, there's the scaling product manager, but then there's also the evolving product manager. And that's where I always came in a lot, where I got something that was mature, it had gone through invention, scale, and then it plateaued. And it's about how do we figure out what to do next. But I love the mindset of thinking about those different things. You hear about it for entrepreneurs and people who are starting their companies, that there's different people. Somebody can start it and get it going, but somebody else needs to come in and scale it. I love that approach for product management. Paul Hurwitz, you said you mostly agree with May. I'd like to get your context on mostly agree.
So I've been through a number of startups, including one where I was employee number 3 in the company, but also bigger ones that were already a little bit bigger. In my experience, including myself, when I became a product manager at that startup, the first product manager is often somebody who's just executing on what the founder wants to build, and is not yet able to be at a point where you're really listening to the marketplace, where you're really listening to customers and doing primary research and that sort of thing. You're really just like the founder says, do this, and you're doing that. You're working with the engineering team to build out the requirements, etc., and just executing on that vision. I think it's not till a little bit later, maybe when you're bringing on a second product manager, that the founder evolves themselves to be at a point where they're going to let the company be more product and market driven, as opposed to driven by their vision and their strategy.
Yeah. No, I mean, we've had the conversation about the, bringing product management into the organization. Almost, Steve, I'm thinking that this is like we're looking at the life cycle. There's when do you introduce product management? That was a call we had, almost about a year ago. And how do you introduce it? This is now looking at it from okay, we're scaling it now. And how do we go from that stage to, and then we've talked about life cycle ending it. I love that way to look at it, Paul. And you're now at a company that's probably in that scale, entering the scale phase, right?
Yeah, we're definitely at they brought in a chief product officer about 6 to 8 months ago, who's my boss. And I'm still seeing stuff that's happened because the two founders said to do it this way. And we're now just starting to really get to the point where we can change that and really be more market and product focused.
Yeah.
But the founder probably was market driven. For version 1 of the company's first product, it's like, you know what? I need this. And I can't find one out there, so I'm going to build my own. And then 62 other people say, oh, I love that you built that. I'd love to have one too. And then, that's great. And then it's the second one that's the real challenge, or the second release of the first one. And people ask me when to hire product management. And my real answer is, right before your first product disaster. And usually,
see, I would mostly agree with you, except that the CEO is definitely market driven. They found this problem, they want to solve it, but they have this notion of what the product should be.
Mm-hmm.
They did their thinking, whatever, but they might be a little bit more rigid in how exactly they think it should be, how they should be solving the problem, as opposed to listening to the market once they get past that.
Right.
Okay. It makes sense. And Steve, I was thinking your comment reminded me of the Charles Handy story about, he was trying to get to a town called Avoca in Ireland, and he was lost, and he asked somebody for directions, and they said, oh, that's easy. You're going to go up the hill and down the hill, and you're going to cross a river, and you're going to see a tavern, John's Tavern, big sign. You can't miss it. A quarter of a mile before you get there, turn right. But when there are no other signs as to when you should turn or when you should hire the product manager, it's when you get to that disaster. Unfortunately, it's hard to predict when that disaster is going to be, and we need to do it. Brian, I want to get to your answer in a second, but I want to bring in some other people who are on the call. Joy McCaffrey, you've had a lot of experience at startups and scale-ups. I'd love to get your take on this.
I mostly agree with Paul, who mostly agreed with May.
Is that the reverse of a yes and?
Yes. And so I agree that I consider the founder to be the first product manager. Mm-hmm. They found the product market fit. And, if the company lasts, they found a product market fit with people who are willing to pay for it. I agree with Paul that the founder, however, these are my words, kind of has tunnel vision on what their product is and what it should be. And, I worked at a startup where they had about 15 employees. It was an event management company, and they worked on supply management and, spend for event management. And they kept insisting that their supply chain management and spend analysis, and they wanted to use that for SEO and for all of their messaging. And I said, listen, I've worked at a lot of companies, and event management is a very small spend at most companies. So you have to understand that you are very niche, that something that is 100% of your life, the customers that you're talking to, it may only be 1% of their life. Maybe at larger companies, it's more than that. So, they have this based on their experience and their research and their findings. It's their whole world. Whereas for other people, it's not their whole world. They really can't see the forest for the trees. They can't see the bigger picture. And so that was kind of my job as the product manager to teach them about the bigger market. I mean, she did have a product market fit, but it was very niche, and she was selling to very large companies that have very slow approval processes, long selling times. And it was just harder for her to grasp that because it was her whole world. It was her, it's a big, huge problem. It should be a big, huge problem to everybody else. And that's not necessarily the case. But
as a product manager, you helped give that context to bring it past just their blinders.
Well, that was the attempt. I do agree with Paul. It's their baby. I have worked at several startups, and they know exactly what they want, and they know exactly what has worked so far. And the thing that I don't agree with Paul, and this is kind of nitpicking, I feel like it takes a long time before you hire a product manager, or they agree to a product manager that's willing to look outside of what the founder already has. I feel like it takes a long time. The company has to have a lot of customers. They have to come to the point where they have to realize we can't grow anymore until we expand. They have to say, I get it now. We have to, 6 years. Yeah, that's good. The company that I'm at right now, I call a startup because it has a startup feel, but it's really 10 years old. And it's literally only in the last 2 years that the company has exploded exponentially. Like, it's insanity. Like, on some Mondays, they send out an email, well, we fired 10 new employees. I mean, it's growing exponentially in just the last 2 years. Before that, it was stagnant.
I love that experience you're going through now, and in figuring out how we can do with product management and the importance of product management and helping make that happen. I do want to get Kelly and Calvin at some point, but I do want Brian, you had a great answer. Actually, you brought a new lens for me to think about. Brian said the first thing that comes to mind is the need for more communication. As the number of stakeholders increase, so does the need to increase communication. So we've talked about prioritization, we've talked about product market fit, but part of the role of product management as we scale is that communication and stakeholder management.
Yeah, I think, as you scale anything, more people are going to get involved. So I think this really goes on top of Jason's answer of more inputs, more customers, things like that. But then you also have more development teams, more compliance, more legal. So just the communication across a growing company, you just have those. The number of lines of communication you need to open up greatly increases.
You now have more departments and more department heads and more stakeholders that you have to work with. And then you also added, and since May threw it out there, I will jump on the product ops bandwagon. Product ops role is essential to making sure that the product team is aligned and runs as efficiently as possible. The answer we got right after yours was from Lalita, also a product ops person. Strong functional leadership who understands the role. We talked about the importance of leadership understanding the product management role. And then she said, of course, product ops to help the PMs focus on their core responsibilities, and product ops help with the scale. So a lot of good, I think product ops and scale go together. And I think it's nice to see more people talking about that. Kelly Walton, want to bring you into this conversation, and from your experience, get your take on how can product management evolve and change as a company goes to scale. You said you've got some experience in startups and that type of stuff.
Yeah. Thanks, Grant. I think lots of good points. Everyone far. I think the thing that I would add is I think the importance of data is even more critical as you're scaling. I think referencing back to sort of founder tunnel vision, comment earlier, if it's a situation where it's your opinion versus the founder's opinion, the founder's going to win. So it becomes critical that you're, bringing, market data, user analytics, whatever that can support, your
Kelly, your microphone is cutting in and out. I'm going to try to summarize, and if I, got it wrong, basically it's bring data, right? Use the analytics. And I love the point you made about, especially in a startup or scale up, the founder still has a lot of gravity and their opinions will take a lot of weight. You need that data, the market data, the insights from the data to help change the decision points. And it goes back to Jason's prioritization and bringing that in. Kelly, great insight. I hadn't even thought about the data aspect of it, but Steve, we talk about that all the time, right? You need to bring data.
In God we trust, all others must bring data.
And, as we're trying to make more prioritization decisions, as there are more ideas that we can be doing with, data is going to be what helps bring us away from opinions and put us into actually using it. So Kelly, thank you for that great idea. Calvin Marshall. You love all of it, and that's all you have to say?
Yeah. Yes. And
there we go. I love that phrase.
Yes, reading, a lot of what was said previously, including what May said, what May wrote, and what Brian wrote, resonated. So I just kind of hearted a couple of those. But the one thing that I would add is I've had some experience in startups. They weren't, it wasn't like I was the fourth person there, but something that was kind of scaling up. It seems to me that the founder is oftentimes a developer, an inventor that's creating a solution to an existing problem, and that as you're ramping up, needing somebody that thinks through all those other parts of product management, that we think about in terms of the strategy. And so it seemed to me that someone would need to come in a little bit sooner in that cycle and that ramp up, as we're looking to, as the company is looking to expand and evolve.
No, that's a really good point. I always say, the one who owns it is the one who writes it down and keeps it current. Yeah. And the president doesn't write it down. Yeah. Right. It's all in his or her head. And then, you'll get into these discussions and you're like, oh, that's how you see this product, or that's how you see this company. And it's like, let's write that stuff down so everybody knows it.
Steve, what was actually hitting me while we were all talking about the scaling was it's almost like where before your scale or going into the scale, often it's one product manager and the founder or a founder. That's where in the Courts Open framework, we talk about the three roles of strategy, planning, and growth. Right. It almost feels like that's when you start bifurcating or trifurcating that role in specializing. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, frankly, I think you want to make that division sooner rather than later. Yeah. And certainly in my two startup experiences, I was like some of you others who I'm the only product manager, and in my head what I said, I was the only adult, and yet I think product managers, as I think Paul said, bring a certain skill set. Grant, as our Drucker fellow, is all about strategery. And I tend to have a lot of experience in product planning and release planning, although frankly, I think I'm better at product marketing, or at least I like it better. But then on the other hand, I don't like sales and marketing people. So that's confusing. But I think in the end, when you really drill into a particular person's skills, they tend to be one of those three roles. Are you looking at the future? Are you looking at the next release? Or are you looking at selling more of what we already have?
Yeah, I completely agree. And although, Steve, when it comes to the product marketing or product growth stuff, it's like woebegone effect. You just think you're really good at it. That's why you like it. And as we see with some of our clients, they think they're really good at things. And then as we dig into it, they go, oh, wait, maybe we're not. So, wow, what a great conversation on that Monday question. Thanks for all of that. Next, I want to go to the poll. Here, I'll put it on the full screen. Our poll was, what is the hardest thing to manage while scaling a product management organization? Options were hiring and onboarding, standardizing processes and artifacts, prioritization, aligning roadmaps for multiple products, and other, it depends. And Steve, I did a first. I actually answered other to my own poll, which never happens. But I'll get to my answer later, but it was because of some of the experiences we're having with some clients where we're seeing there's a gap that I'm seeing in that scale that I think we need to talk about. But we had a tie, 28%. It's actually almost perfectly distributed. 28% for hiring and onboarding, 28% for prioritization, 21% for aligning roadmaps for multiple products, and 21% for other, it depends. And I'm not going to even try to make other it depends win, because that still means I'd have to break it down. So I don't have a dog in this fight this week. Jason, how'd you vote?
Yeah, prioritization based on my Monday answer as well.
Okay, prioritization. So I assume that's actually one of the reasons I put it in there. I thought you would vote. I try to pull the poll from the answers we have.
Oh, I thought you meant that you just wanted to write, okay, item 3 is Jason's answer. Now, what would Jason answer? And then I erase Jason.
Yes, exactly. I was reading your answer. I thought that might be the case. I'm glad you stayed with it. Brian, how did you vote?
Other.
You were with me. You said communication. You went back to the communication thing.
I went back to communication, and I said, if there wasn't another, I'd pick prioritization and alignment combined into one.
Wait, but I didn't get it. Hard disk, not combining things.
Brian's doing his own polls now. That's all.
Paul Hurwitz. You're on mute, Paul.
I answered aligning roadmaps for multiple products, but I was actually struggling with choosing standardizing processes and artifacts. Because I've seen in a number of companies as they're growing that you get product managers that come in from all sorts of different organizations that have done things differently, and then everybody is like, well, no, my way is the best way, and then you have to wait till a May comes in to standardize all the processes. But sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. So I was struggling.
As per our conversation in the Product Ops Alliance last week, it's the thing formerly known as process, because we're not allowed to call it process anymore. So it's the thing formerly known as process. I think it's soon to be called practice, but we'll get there. And I totally agree, Paul. I was surprised that standardizing processes and artifacts didn't have any votes, especially with some product ops people in the community voting on that. With that, I'm going to pivot to you, May. Where'd you vote?
Hiring and onboarding.
What?
Hiring and onboarding.
Okay.
Specifically hiring. Because
so where Brian's pulling two answers together, May's actually breaking them apart.
Well, onboarding is difficult, but overall, I think, especially today, hiring is the most difficult, because not only are you just trying to hire, not only are you trying to hire product people, when you hire product people, you got to hire everything else as well. It's extremely challenging to hire, but it's also really challenging to hire for the right culture fit, as well as people with the talent to do the thing that you need them to do. And when you hire someone, you need them to kind of fill a gap, right? And trying to find someone who is possibly the best fit to fill most of the gap is very, very challenging, because it depends if you need industry experience or a specific type of product experience, technical expertise, or product marketing expertise in the specific weird way that we sell, right? So it's important to keep that in mind, and also finding people to do that who have the right attitude, that's hard.
Actually, I think that May just broke that into 4 different answers.
Yes.
So thank you, May. Joy McCaffrey, I've got an idea which one you're going to vote for, but I'd like to hear which one you voted for.
Well, I didn't vote for other and then say all of the above, even though I would say that all of the above is very difficult.
Hardest.
The hardest thing is all of the above.
See, even prioritization of the whole is the hardest thing.
I agree with May, and I agree with separating it out between hiring and onboarding, because those are 2 very different things. Onboarding is high, but I agree with May. And the reason that I think that's the hardest is because I feel like that's external. Like, I feel like I have the skills, even though it becomes very difficult to, prioritize and, all of the other things that you mentioned. But hiring is like, just, is the right person looking for a job right now?
Yeah.
Are they, did they apply for the open position? I mean, are they good interviewers? They could be terrible interviewers and wonderful employees. I mean, I just think that that's really, really, it's been difficult for me to find jobs. And I think also it's difficult as a company to find the people.
Well, and the opposite of that, they could be wonderful interviewers and terrible employees.
Yes, that is very true.
Kelly Walton, did you vote? I know you're new to it, so.
I didn't. I didn't see the poll in time to vote, but I can cast my vote now potentially, and I would say hiring as well too. And
oh wait, so we're now putting hiring and onboarding because Joy didn't vote and Kelly didn't vote, but now hiring and onboarding is now at. You voted? Oh, so you did vote for hiring and onboarding. Okay.
Yeah.
But still, Kelly, you may be the tie-breaking vote that puts hiring and onboarding in the win.
I had a purpose today that I didn't realize I had, so that's all.
Well, it would have been the good purpose if it was breaking a tie for me to win. But since I don't have a dog in this fight, having Joy and May win, I guess that's just as good.
But if you combine prioritization and alignment of the roadmaps like they should be, then that wins.
There you go, Brian, trying to change the rules. Again, as Steve said, it's his own poll. Calvin, I haven't gotten to you. Where did you vote?
I didn't vote. I thought about prioritization and aligning the roadmaps. And then I read the comments. And again, I looked at Bruce's comments. And I thought, yeah, communication. And so I hearted that.
You mean Brian's comment on communication?
I heard of that because I just thought about situations that I've been in where communication becomes the challenge, and being able to communicate about it becomes kind of this horse trade regarding prioritization among product managers, and how do you communicating the differences and determining where things fit, and so that's where I landed.
Okay. Boy, it just sounds like you did a ditto for Brian, because you both agreed with combining prioritization and aligning roadmaps and multiple products, and you hearted his communication. So are you just in the Brian Weber fan club? Are you trying to give him control of my poll?
Yes, we are all wanting to do that.
Yeah, so I was going to channel Joy and just say a simple yes.
Okay.
No, I think that just communication within organizations becomes so key, and when you have these situations where you have competing priorities, and you have different product managers coming in with different tools and different alignment, it just becomes so important to be able to communicate both within the product team as well as throughout the organization. So that was my thinking around that.
Yeah, I get it. Steve, I know you didn't vote.
Yeah.
You never vote, but what would you have voted for?
To skew the results to the correct answer. That's all. Well, if I had voted, I would have voted for prioritization, because
you just made it a tie again.
Yeah, I did. Because it seems to me that when we're scaling, we suddenly get to this place where the ideas for the product are 2, 3, 10 times as much as our capacity to build. And so suddenly it's like, hey, I had this idea. Oh, no, it's sales guy committed to a feature for a client. And then
you had to turn that into a sales dig, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. And then we look at it and go, okay, earliest availability to work on that feature is 9 months from now, because there's 9 months of other commitments in front of your commitment. And so I envision like this, what is it? The snake with the food in the middle of his stomach somewhere. And it seems to me that we never scale development as quickly as we scale our desires for development. So,
yeah.
Well, and you add on top of that, hey, that original architecture that we had for the product when we first launched it in its initial phases will not scale. So we have instant technical debt that has nothing to do with our client community or sales or features. So now we have to roll that in. I mean, everything just starts to get messy, and you have to keep up on everything. Otherwise, you're going to be upside down.
Yeah. And I think that the other answers are correct, except not limited to scaling. I mean, at every part of the product or the company's life, finding talent is incredibly difficult, and HR is absolutely no help.
Yeah.
It's, I talk to people who say, I've got this opening, I can't find any good people. And I talk to really good people and they say, I can't find an opening. And all I can see is in the middle, HR saying, you didn't use the right keyword in your resume.
Yeah. I see that. I completely agree. And so I had voted other, and I'd said it's keeping strategy and execution aligned. We're seeing multiple cases of prospects and clients where if they have a strategy, the strategy is over here, they've got execution over here, and they're not connected. And they're just like people going around aimlessly. And I wrote the article about how product management connects strategy execution. So I thought I'd weave what I've been thinking about into my answer. But Kelly Walton has won the poll for me. She put into our chat, hiring has the most unknown unknowns. The other items can be iterated on. And all of a sudden, I'm changing my vote from other in strategy and execution to hiring and onboarding, which wins.
Talk about manipulating the data in order to be to make your point.
Grant, you can't do that. I think it was last week, Grant, you said you were not going to select the top item on the poll.
Oh,
sorry, invalid.
Darn it. You're right, Brian. I did. No, I did not say I was going to put what my answer at the time was top, but it wasn't my answer at the time. It wasn't my answer until the call. It was when my answer was other, which again was a surprise because I was actually going to vote for prioritization. But Kelly Walton, our first time caller, first time participant, has swayed my vote, and I'm going to go with the connect. I'm going to go with the X's across because Kelly, Joy, and May are my middle column. I won Hollywood Squares across with that vote. No,
Grant,
and Kelly, I was just gonna say, and Kelly, this is where you learn that Grant definitely does play favorites.
May, what were you gonna say?
I want to touch on your point there about strategy and execution alignment. So one of the things that I'm currently working through is how do we basically either funnel down the strategy or funnel up the strategy and then communicate that with the growing group of stakeholders that we have. And it's really challenging because like each group is looking for something very different, but also like how do you come up with a cohesive way to talk about your portfolio of products or even just your product, especially when you start having multiple product managers work on different products?
So probably could be a whole week on that. And so I'm going to address it briefly. Some people will tell you OKRs will do that for you, but most OKRs aren't done in a cascading manner. I like the OGSM stuff that Roger Martin talks about in the Play to Win. It's what's used at Procter & Gamble and other companies like that. you have to have some sort of cascading where you set it here and it comes down. The article I wrote basically says product management is really that bridge that connects it. And if you don't have a bridge, product management prioritizing what we're working on, what our roadmap is, where we're going, then it's hard to do. And so again, as I said, originally prioritization was the answer that I was planning to vote for, but we were dealing with some stuff this week with a client and it really made me think about the other one. But I think that becomes a good discussion for a future topic of the week, because that's, well, I myself could talk for a week on that topic. I mean, that's something that's really relevant and really, that I like talking about. So I appreciate that question, and you're going to be my star of the week. We do that. Okay.
So my question, what does all that come down to then? Kelvin hearted it. Communication.
I don't know. Brian is making his play. I feel like I'm like that. There's a coup happening, and the poll is being under attack. Poll management. But we're going to change our topic and go to our first open-ended question. And we've been talking around this. How can product management help companies scale? What can we do? What are the best things we can do to help the whole company? I'm going to go to Joy.
My first thought was duh. I mean, product management is making sure you're building the right product. And the right product will help the company to scale.
Make sure we're doing the right things. Joy, that's all Calvin it. Kelly Walton, you say drive alignment.
Yeah, so
your mic went out for a second. You there?
is that better now?
Yeah.
So yeah, as all of these moving parts are happening, there's differences of opinions that are happening along the way. So I think as a product leader, being able to drive that alignment across these different parts of the organization and get everyone on the same page, so everyone's moving in the same direction.
I love that answer. Back to the May conversation on strategy to execution, starts with strategy. Product strategy is what Joy said. It's doing the right things, picking the right things to place the bets on. But then as you start moving further down, it's alignment of the execution as it goes further. So Kelly, that's a great one. Jason, there's a little prioritization pulling its way back in here, isn't there?
Yeah, I really like what Kelly said as far as how product management can help like all parties scale, not just the products scale. So this is talking about whole product again, is to help drive alignment for everybody understanding where the product's going into the market and how it's going to grow across all departments. Everything from legal, finance, marketing, sales, kind of all operations, and product is the one that can control that. And should be responsible for that.
But don't call it glue, because then we'll get into arguments on Twitter. Okay. Sorry.
I'm also not going to call it communication, because I don't want to give Brian yet another communication plug.
The term I used was leverage or fulcrum. We're a leverage or fulcrum point that, through doing the right things, through aligning it, through enabling them with the right content, we help enable all of it. I'm thinking product management must be pretty important if it's all these things that we're doing to help a company scale. Paul Hurwitz.
Well, Joy stole my answer. The one that I always give every time a question where I can give that answer is, if we're helping the company build the right products, then the company's going to be successful.
Wait, I thought your answer was that we put it in the customer's lens.
No.
You're always the one who tells Steve and I, it's the customer, stupid.
Yes, but
okay.
It's building the right products for those customers.
Okay.
And if the customers like your product, the company is going to be successful.
All right. I love you. And that was expanding upon it. I appreciate you taking Joy's and expanding on it. May Wong. Are we getting from strategy to execution in this answer?
I was gonna go with like the whole product, and then Jason said it. I think it's like going back to the idea of the whole product though. It's give if you have a good product and you do enablement properly, like product marketing properly, and people get behind the idea of your product and use that product to drive the overall company success, then your company is suddenly aligned.
I got that. Calvin Marshall.
Making sure we're focused on solving the right problem, which I think is kind of what Joy said and kind of what Paul said as well.
Wasn't it just rephrasing it? Calvin got Jason's thesaurus out and is looking at how can I say the same thing in a different way?
If you'd asked me first, I would have said it first.
I'm sorry, Calvin. Next time I will ask you first. And I thought about skipping Brian in this round purely because he's trying to take over my poll. But Brian's been a valuable contributor this week, and I can't do that because I like him. Brian, what's your take on this one?
First, I'll get you the new poll Tuesday night. Don't worry about it.
Well, that'd be sooner than I get it. So it's normally Wednesday morning at 8:30. I'm like, oh, shoot. And Steve gets a text from me. How about this?
But I would simply ditto Kelly and Jason. Alignment of the company across what you're doing.
With good communication.
I wasn't going to go there.
Okay.
Thank you for stating it.
There.
You and Jason both threw it out for me, so I appreciate it.
Of course. Well, communication is a good thing, and it's key, especially as we scale, because that's where things fall down. Steve Johnson, do you have a take on this one?
Yeah, I was just going to say what Brian said, but then he didn't say it. So I will say communication. And, getting everybody behind one vision for the product. And I've quoted him before, but Patrick Lencioni said, the key to success is that all of us are working for the same company. And I have encountered so many companies where the VP of sales is running a distribution center and the VP of marketing is running a branding company and the VP of development is really in research. And, if we could all just agree that this is the right product and this is what we're going to do with it, then get everybody behind that with communication.
Communication, yes, I agree with that. We don't have a ton of time for this next question. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, you should read what Jason.
Jason said in the chat that this conversation has gone off the rails, and I take offense to that. It's because Brian tried to steal it from me. He was trying to take it over. I got defensive, and I apologize. How's that, Jason?
Well, who knows? When this comes out as a podcast, maybe I'll get the highest scores because nobody knows what the hell's going on.
It's conflict and chaos is great.
Maybe I'm just trying to embody what it's like to be in a fast scaling company by creating chaos and conflict and lack of communication. So it's almost like an experiential. Yeah. That's why.
Yeah, that's a reverse engineer it. That's good. Yeah.
So we don't have a ton of time for this. I'm actually going to just ask Steve this question.
Because you already know the answer. So
with which stakeholder will product management have the most friction as the company scales?
Sales. Absolutely sales.
Shouldn't that question have said, with which stakeholders will Steve have the most friction as the company scales?
Probably so. But the thing in scaling is we have to sell what's on the truck because we got to sell so much of it. And as soon as you start saying, oh, well, this client wants a special feature and this client needs some custom work and this client needs a whole lot of handholding, then you're damaging your growth trajectory. So sell what we have and recognize the revenue. We're in scaling mode.
And I put this in, I'm like, okay, what answer could there be outside of Steve's sales? I mean, it could be development. I could see friction with development.
Support.
No, support, customer support.
Yeah.
And May's like,
I've seen this quite a few times, and like it kind of stems from this like friction with sales as well. As sales is going out selling stuff, products trying to keep up, but like when you're scaling, you're usually not putting out the best product because you're still trying to evolve to match the new market. So support is freaking out because you're getting suddenly a huge amount of volume. Support's never properly funded or resourced. So all of a sudden they're very angry at you product for not having delivered, working product to things that you sold, right?
I like that. I was going to go, I like to scapegoat finance. And I think that there's friction with finance because we need more investment in budget to scale people, or maybe that's an HR area. If hiring is the hardest thing, wouldn't that be where the most friction is? I don't know. Any last thoughts before we go to the lightning round?
Well, I think there's also a difficulty with development who wants to get things right, which is the right answer, except when you're in hyper growth, it's like you really need to get it out more than you need to get it out right. Mm-hmm. And we'll pay for that next year when we have all this technical debt. But I could see how they could have a lot of friction of things are moving faster than we can move, and we don't have enough resources. And I don't like to ship anything that isn't premium quality. And you're like, well, right now we just need to ship.
Okay. I actually, and so I debated in my head, and that's why I put it in, because I think there were multiple places we could do that. And development was one I was thinking of. And I think, but the key thing is product management actually has friction with everybody because we're the only organization that touches everybody, that engages it. And what do we need, Brian, to make it work?
Good communication.
Good communication. So we're going to go.
Wait, was that a recording and you just pushed the Brian button and then you just said communication?
Instead of the no button from John Harmer from a long time ago, it's Brian's going to create a good communication button. Those things.
I was going to say, I have to ask Steve. He put that rant on message up. I need to figure out how to get my communication message up.
All right. So we're into the lightning round. The lightning round question is, what is your best advice to a product leader joining a fast scaling company? And Brian, in respect for what you've brought to the call this week, I'm going to let you answer first.
Well, I appreciate that. I think start finding out who all your different stakeholders are and communicate with them. It's really, it's how do you get alignment across, and it's going to be different for each company. What are their primary problems, things like that. But I truly believe communication, you need that to fix any problem. If you're not talking to people, you're not going to fix the problem.
Okay, Brian. Brian, with a good take stakeholders and communicate with them to align. Kelly Walton, you've come on strong in the first one, so we got high expectations here. He said alignment. You had brought alignment in the conversation in an earlier question. What's your take? What's your advice to a product leader joining a fast scaling company?
Yeah, I would agree with that comment. I think reaching out to different leaders in the organization and getting that alignment, that communication is going to be key.
So you're going to ditto him?
Yes.
No additive?
And not this round.
Okay, not this round. We're next going to go to Calvin Marshall. So I'm not letting other people steal his stuff.
It's too late. Too late. I was going to echo what Brian said and what Kelly said, and my thought was around finding out who those hippos are, and really getting those people engaged, understanding where those concerns are, and bringing those people in close.
Actually, that's a perfect yes and Calvin, because it's not just the stakeholders, it's those hippos who have gravity that their weight's going to be important and help sway the decisions. I love that answer. Paul Hurwitz.
I would have given a different answer before 2 months ago when I started this job, but the answer that I'm going to give is know your users. Too many times in a B2B company, and too many times everybody knows the customer. Everybody knows how to sell to the customer, what they're looking for, the buyer, but not enough people know what the users are looking for.
Interesting.
I like that. I like that idea, because that's going to also help with scale. People like it. People use it. Your NRR goes up. A whole bunch of stuff. That's nice job, Paul. Big curveball there. Made us go think some different things. Joy McCaffrey.
Flexibility.
Flexibility. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on. You need to be flexible because you got things coming from all around. As always, Joy is like the queen of the simple one-word answer that resonates. I love it.
I mean, I can say more. I have worked with people who have literally said, well, at my last company, we had somebody who did this. You know, this isn't my forte. Or, well, at other companies, they have departments that do this. Well,
I have heard that one.
You know, roll up your sleeves. You got to do what you got to do. If you want to, if you want the company to grow, step in, step up. So.
Quite a dissertation from Joy. May Wong.
Find the people who are going to help you. Like when you're going to do your stakeholder interviews and like talking to all the people, as many people as you can to learn the landscape, internal and external, there are going to be people who stand out to you like, these are the people who are going to help you as the company scales and grows and changes, and they're going to help you communicate to their teams and to help you build a better case for when you need to build a case for this.
I love that. Find your allies who can be the partners for you.
Find the helpers.
Yes. Jason Vincelette.
Yeah, similar to what other people are saying, but find out who's having a hard time with the scaling. This is going back to whole product thinking, because eventually, if that's not addressed, that's going to hurt you.
It's theory of constraints, right? Let's see where the constraints are, and let's help get that through so we can get the whole product. I love that. Steve Johnson.
I'm going to agree with everybody and add hire the best athletes. And maybe that's a little bit flexibility, but I do continue to see these ridiculous job postings that what I really need is somebody who doesn't necessarily know the domain and isn't an expert on the product, but somebody who can hit the ground running. So find the best athlete.
Find the best athlete. I love, this has been a good lightning round. A lot of good. See, Jason, I've taken it back from the going off the rails and we've brought it back to here. And I'm going to go back to bring this full circle. My answer is going to be going back to the conversation I started with. I talked with somebody who is at a fast scaling company and they've hired product operations before early in the scale to help have that person guide and be the help with the foundation, reduce friction in the product management process. So I'm going to say, think about bringing product operations on sooner than later, because they're going to be a key person to help you with the launch. So I know I say this every week. What a wonderful conversation. I mean, I really, really enjoyed learning, taking it to the brink of going off the rails, Jason, and then pulling it back for a wonderful final lightning round. And I learned, I changed my opinion. Paul, Calvin, May, Joy, Jason, Brian, thank you for being back with us. Kelly Walton, pretty strong first time. We look forward to having you on future ones. My friend Steve, thank you. And we do this every week. We do this in the community. Monday, the question goes in. Jason knows what to think about the answer. Wednesday is the poll, and maybe I need to start working with Brian on figuring out who does the poll. And on Friday, we have these wonderful calls. So thank you all for a wonderful topic of the week this week. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week in the community. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.